Yeah. All right. Hey guys. Walking Dead's back. In case for anybody was wondering, so now I'm gonna be doing this and Teen Wolf since they're gonna coincide for probably the next 6 weeks. I think the next 6 weeks. Yeah, something like that. So I'm gonna be doing both of them. And God, what a comeback to the season four. I think. The first half of season four, the mid-season finale ended with the prison being destroyed, the group scattered, the governor's finally dead, and Judith is believed to be dead is part of the major things that happen. And so this episode simply entitled After is just is I guess half of the initial what happens after those events. This episode focuses mainly on Michonne, Carl, and Rick. And so it starts off with Michonne, and so I guess I'll talk about her plot throughout the entire episode. When in the very beginning, she goes back to the prison, and you can see she's visibly distressed because before she met up with Rick's group, and then before she even met up with Andrea, she was a loner, and she didn't have this sense of belonging or family, which is what I get out of it. And you get it so that now this first family she's had in a long time is gone. So she retreats to her old ways, and she finds two walkers and manages to cut their arms off and it's either smash their jaws or cut their bottom jaws off, and then tie them up and walk them around so that she can blend in with the environment. And she does this for most of the episode. And there's a specific, probably in the first third of the episode, where she has the two walkers and she's walking across a path. And it's a path that was shown earlier that Rick and Carl were walking down. That's what this path is. So she looks at it and she sees those tracks, but she chooses to continue on in her own direction. And she continues to go on. And then we get to see a glimpse of her past. We see a flashback of her, I guess, right before the outbreak, or the early stages of the outbreak, where her boyfriend, I guess one of his friends, and her son, I think it's her son, are all huddled up together. But then, as we all know, probably by what happened, everything goes wrong, and then her boyfriend and his friend ended up becoming the two walkers that she originally walked around with at the end of season 2, beginning of season 3. And then she wakes up because it's a dream. And so she continues walking, and of course, walkers like to go in like a group. So she's walking in a group of walkers, and she sees one that resembles her. It's another African American woman with dreadlocks, and she looks at that, and I guess she takes it as, if I continue down this path, that's going to be me. I'm just going to die. I'm going to end up dying. I'm going to be alone. So she goes through and she literally just kills all the walkers in the group, and then she sets off to find Carl and Rick, which she eventually does. Now, the Carl and Rick story of this is an interesting one. It starts off very much full of contempt, which is Rick. Rick is a broken man. He's been beaten physically, emotionally, psychologically. He's broken. He's worse for wear, and then also he's very protective right now of Carl. He walks in and he is just like, he doesn't, he as far as we know, he's lost Judith, so he doesn't want to lose Carl as well. So, but he doesn't understand his own limitations in terms of, again, his injuries that he sustained in the mid-season finale. And, Carl kind of, at the same time, resents him for all that. He resents Rick for not being the man of action last season, for kind of taking a step back and wanting a normal life and letting things happen. He blames Rick for everything that's happened. And he's also, mad that, Rick still treats him like a child. In a way, he doesn't let him do things. So, about halfway through the episode, Rick just kind of falls asleep or passes out. And he's passed out for a while. For much of like a good day. And Carl goes, and then there's two walkers knocking at the door, and then Carl goes out and kills two of them and another one. And he comes back and he tells Rick this, and he yells at Rick that he doesn't need him, that he'd be better off if he was dead. And he's just kind of going on this rant, blaming Rick for everything. And it's weird because Carl, he seems a lot more grown up because he can somewhat handle himself. But then I think a good thing from earlier in the episode is you see that he gets amazed by seeing like a kid's room with like comic books and video games and things like that. And he's amazed by it, but then he snapped back almost immediately into reality, and he's like, "Oh, well, none of this matters." And the contempt that he has for his father just shows almost throughout the entire episode. He makes a comment about Shane teaching him how to tie a knot, and he says it to his dad, and he's like, and there's a lot of tension there. So Carl goes out and he finds more food. He loses a shoe to a walker in the process. He finds more food and he eats a lot of pudding. I mean, he feels like he's on his own. And then he goes back and, it's night, so he goes to sleep. And I guess Rick wakes up. But, Rick, being worse for wear, he doesn't necessarily talk. So Carl thinks he's a walker. And Carl points the gun at him and he finds out and he comes to realize he can't do it. He can't shoot. He can't do it. He's not strong enough. That everything he said was out of anger. That he does need his father. That it's not. He can't do it alone. It's not Rick's fault. And then he says, and he goes and he says, "I'm scared," repeatedly. And then in the morning, they both talk it over, and Rick acknowledges that his son is not a kid anymore. His son is a man. His son's been through a lot. His son's killed many walkers. God, Carl had to kill his own mother at one point. So, I mean, Carl's been through a lot more than most kids have. And Rick also admits that, he held on to the old trying to make things back the way they were, trying to get back to a normal life for Judith and Carl. And now that Judith's not there, he's kind of snapped it back to that's not possible. We're not going to be able to go back to how things were, But that we're also not too far gone. They have a really cool, tender moment right there, and then Michonne shows up, and so that's this episode in a nutshell. We see a lot of, and since it was the focus of these three characters into the previews for the next episode, it looks like all the other survivors are going to be focused more heavily on in the next episode or couple of episodes. So. Because this was all Rick, Carl, and Michonne, which I feel like the Carl and Rick had to happen, but it was nice to see Michonne because Michonne was a mysterious character up until this point. We saw just her crying with the baby up until this point, and then just hints of her past over time, and then Carl and his father needing to fix things was another thing that it had to happen. It had to happen now. They couldn't do it or at least they couldn't not focus on them like in the second or third episode of this half. They had to do it now. And this episode was really, in that sense, for story-wise, was really good, and also character development. We see also something that was very shocking in the very beginning of the episode is Herschel's zombified head, which was unexpected. I was like, oh. After, that happened last season, that was the last thing that crossed my mind that, would have happened. So I'm like, oh, okay. So, and then Michonne stabs it, but out of mercy, if anything. So like I said, it's a very good episode, and this just makes me excited for the rest of this half of the season. They're definitely going into more psychological aspects. I mean, especially since now that they're not in the prison, I guess we're going to deal a lot more with walkers. It's going to be much more walker heavy again. But a lot of people joke that this show is, an hour of people arguing and occasionally zombies show up. But if it was just killing zombies, if it was flipped around where it was just killing zombies and then occasionally people argue, I don't think the show would have lasted nearly as long. I mean, if you want that, you can watch the first season or two, and that's what those are. There's a lot of zombie killing in those two seasons. But like if you want like story, then this is more about the story. We've seen every way that you can kill a zombie already, so why not just build character? Because that's what I like about this, is that it's about how people react to the zombie apocalypse and things like that. So it's really cool. Um, this is a really good episode. Is it the best Walking Dead episode I've seen? Maybe not. I mean, especially like I guess all around. All around, maybe not, but story-wise, it's easily one of the best Walking Dead episodes I've seen in a long time. So, yeah, definitely check it out. I mean, it'll be on I assume it'll be on demand probably tomorrow, and then all kinds of other things. So, yeah, I guess I'm done now. So, I'll see you guys later.